Recertification. What is that? Periodically reviewing and validating user access rights. There's two components to it from a technical point of view. On the one side, you would like to review who are your users. So we can name it like user to role association. So who in the company has which roles, and is that person still in the company? Maybe the person changed department. Maybe there's other duties the person is taking up due to a promotion or whatever. So that is the basic review by names. It's usually working very well if you have a good comprehensive organizational chart on your table. So you can compare and say, oh, that's the CFO, no wonder he has this role, and this is the chief accountant, this is the controller, this is the sales manager, this is the regional sales manager. So that is usually a good relation to see what is the job title, what's the name, and what kind of role is that person holding, and is that still legit. Very straightforward review. The second type of recertification is recertifying role entitlements. What does that mean? So when you look in the first exercise and say the CFO, she holds the CFO role or financial admin role in a certain system, you got to check what does this application role that this person is assuming, what is behind it? What does it mean to the application? So what kind of things the person can do? What can he or she see? What can she edit, manage, change, overwrite? So these are the actual entitlements behind a role. What is the actual system function? What screen? Which button? Which field? Even broken down to this. Many systems that are coming very universal and allow a lot of configuration. They give you that level of detail, especially systems where you can configure additional fields by yourself without changing code. So if you have let's say a financial form that customers would have to fill up, and you would like to add one more field for the mobile phone number or any overseas numbers, you can generate that field, but for that specific field that you have generated in addition, you may have to revalidate role entitlements. Who can see it? Who can change it? Who can modify it? The syntax of it. So that is role entitlement. The details behind a certain application or system role. When we talk about roles, simplified way, business role, application role, I just mentioned it a little bit. Business role is more closer to the business function of the person. Ideally, your roles are configured by this kind of naming convention. Makes it very easy for the users to choose what role they need, and also very easy for the reviewer. You can even automate it, because if the system roles sound like job titles, it's even easier to do the org chart comparison. Application roles sometimes, unfortunately, are a bit on the meta level, because they are more pointing on what is done in the application by that particular user, but not necessarily saying what kind of business role is behind it. You can have certain mappings in between and say, as a CFO business role, I can edit bank account details, and I can approve financial payments above $50,000. So that is the application role, is then maybe called approve higher 50K, or change admin or something like that. But again, ideally, your system roles have business role names. That also makes it easier with the segregation of duties and stuff like that. So managing it, of course, there's automated way of synchronizing these roles. So having the recertification done automatically when, let's say, if you have to do it annually or twice a year, it can be triggered, and you basically rerun and double check. You should not have so many deviations if you have an automated synchronization. What does this automated synchronization do? If one user leaves and there's a notification that this identity has been deactivated from the company, or if some user changes department, which means that their department abbreviation or whatever indicator you're using has changed, then it could also trigger a recertification for that particular user, not the entire team. Of course, would be good because, I mean, when one person left, maybe another person came, but technically if it's user event driven, so one user changed department, it triggers recertification of the user and saying, does this person now still do what he or she did before? And someone has to reapprove all the roles for that particular user, or basically they get deactivated, and hopefully in that very same process the person has already applied for the new role profile for the new job or for the new department where this person is joining. So that's the benefit of automated synchronization. If you don't have it, it's a cost factor, of course, and you have to usually change a lot in your application so that the application talks to your workflow where you are deciding on these roles being applicable or not. Since it's a cost factor, it can be done manually. Again, you can classify and say normal roles, we do it once a year, or we would do it event based, and for the critical ones we do it maybe, since it's not so many, we can do it on a monthly basis or even weekly basis if it's critical enough. So proposal here is to, again, manual process need higher frequency, that definitely, because you have to create roles and you have to deactivate roles, and there could be always mistakes. So recertification would be some kind of an inventory check that should be performed frequently. And again, higher frequency means not necessarily weekly, but at least every quarter, and for critical maybe every month. Consider criticality and exposure of the system. Because if it's internal in the company, in the intranet, so, and the person left the company, likelihood that the person can still access is very low, because usually people who leave the company, they surrender their laptop, they surrender their VPN access kit, and they're not coming into the company anymore and connecting anything to the network. So obviously these systems are not so exposed, and even when someone goes home, the account may be still active, they can't use it. Physically can't use it because they just don't have access to it. If the internet is, if it's an internet-based system and it's exposed there, of course, even when you go home, you can use your mobile device. You can still log in with your username that you remember, with your password that you remember, and the user is not deactivated, so all the business function is still available. So that allows someone, if they have a malicious intent, to download certain information, taking screenshots and all these kind of things. So ideally, when the system is exposed to the internet, you have to have an event-driven deactivation. But as I say, if you follow the user, that's the best thing. If you get in the HR notification that someone is leaving tomorrow and in 1 week time, and you deactivate based on that the account, that's the perfect setup. Don't go by system and say, was it a critical system, then I do it. If it's not critical, I don't do it now, I do it later in the end of the year, because I have an annual review anyway. That's not the good way to do it. And you just have to be able to trigger and control such events. So someone joining, someone leaving, usually it's HR notifications. If your company has a high fluctuation or constantly onboarding, offboarding, and moving people in between departments and teams and different working groups, then you should work on automated synchronization. But if it's normal attrition and normal behaviors from this point of view, you may get away with a manual process with a very good documentation and with a strict control that triggers you to do it and serve the evidence, so that it becomes also a good habit and not something that is like always on the back burners, that when critical things happen, it always stays on the table. And there's other ways of doing recertification. Of course, you can do by mapping against active and inactive users or potential inactive users, but you can also review the roles by just comparing between the systems. So for example, if in one system the person has this particular role, how come in another system which is similar the person doesn't have it or have an additional one.